Hey guys, I'm Joshua from Authentic Aquatics. Today I want to talk to you about my 55-gallon tank, but first I need to feed the inhabitants and do a water change. Now that the fish are happy and their tank is clean, before I get into this tank, I want to say welcome to all the new subscribers. A few weeks ago, I was sitting somewhere around like 480 subscribers, which I was like, that's fantastic. And then it was just like a rush. All of a sudden, today I looked in and I had 551 subscribers. So welcome to all of you. But I'm going to call you guys the Shoal because you guys just came one after another. It was great. And you are livening up the comment sections in my videos, so I thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun to interact with you. Addie, you're going to love my wallpaper because it's back and it's in front of this tank, so you're going to be seeing a lot more of it, man. Now that all of that has been said, I want to introduce you to my 55-gallon tank. Now this tank has a little bit of backstory to it. In early January, I was talking with my family's foreign exchange student, Crystal, who I should mention films a lot of my videos and uploads a lot of the photos that she or I take to the Instagram page. But anyway, Crystal was living in the house and she felt kind of constricted by the furniture. She lived in a pre-dressed room and all she really had that she could manipulate was the clothes in the closet and, you know, her little trinkets that were set here or there. So to try and give her something that she could manipulate and work with, I set up a 20-gallon aquarium. That aquarium gave spawn to a lot of videos throughout the year. I had a filter, which was the Rapids Mini, which is now on this tank. We talked about convict cichlids, which lived up in that tank for a while, and I also did a planted tank video on that tank. So throughout the year we were doing all these little projects, but in my mind I had something that I really wanted to work toward, and I knew it was something that Crystal really was looking forward to as well, and that was Discus. We really were breeding the convict cichlids for a while and that sort of kept us entertained, but we really wanted to move into larger, more expensive, more delicate, and just more beautiful fish. So I went into doing a lot of research. I would have to say I put in at least probably 9 hours every week of just research on Discus, and I researched them for a good 3 or 4 months. Then we ended up deciding to take the leap. So we ended up going out and we bought 4 Discus from a reputable breeder here in North Carolina. When I bought the Discus, they were all juveniles. In fact, the smallest one I bought off the parents themselves, so it was still feeding off the parents' slime coat. And that was the super checkerboard pigeon right there. He was the size between $1/4 and $0.50. So you can see just how much in 6 months these guys grow. And they're eating very healthily. I feed them a mixture of either bloodworms or beef heart, and that's 6 cubes a day of either or. Because they're rather expensive fish, I only bought 4 Discus to start out with. And that's really what I could afford at the time that I did buy them. But I found out that they're actually really easy fish to keep. These are the original 4 that I bought, and they're still all here. I had originally intended to add more fish faster as soon as I realized that I was able to keep them, but a few things came up and I ended up sticking with 4, which I will eventually bump up to 6. But I haven't had any squabbles in between, so it's actually been a very, very healthy school. Being as they were so small and they were used to being in large groups of Discus with all their brothers and sisters, I originally brought them home and put them into a holding tank which was 20 gallons. Simply because if you take fish that are used to being in a large school, put them into a small school and lots of space, they're probably going to freak out a little bit. And I really didn't want to cause that stress to the Discus. So I kept them in a 20-gallon for a few months until I saw that they were getting some growth, and then I moved them into the larger tank. It's actually not an uncommon practice, though some people do like to just buy a huge tank and throw a few fish in there. I will say that is less maintenance because I was doing somewhere around 2 and 3 hours of maintenance every day on the 20-gallon. With the 55, I have it pretty much down to clockwork where I only have to do around 45 minutes to an hour of cleaning a day, and that includes feeding. Once I had all the fish established in the holding tank, I had to work to find a 55-gallon, which luckily there was one right down the street that had the hood, the heaters, the stand, and the air pumps all intact for $75. So I jumped on it as soon as I saw it and I brought it home. Now, being as my house has a crawl space underneath, the floors really aren't the most stable in comparison to a lot of other houses or a basement. So I had to re-support the floorboards, which was, needless to say, not a hard task, but it did take an afternoon. Once the floorboards were secure, I went to work filling up the tank, which weighs 450 pounds just water, and I wanted to establish a biofilter. So I built a small filter that was made out of sponge and moving bed filter media, K1, which, although it doesn't do a lot of filtration, it does do some, and it was enough to at least establish a place for bacteria to hold in the tank. Noting that I would eventually move the canister filter down onto this tank as well. In fact, to get the biofilter started, I used the convict cichlid from the first batch of eggs that we had. They needed room to grow out. I needed something to cycle the tank that I knew was pretty disease-free. So I threw them in here. They lived out a few months while I was able to sell them. Then I drained the entire tank completely and cleaned it out, keeping the biofilter established, and then I threw in the discus. That way the discus didn't have to go through any sways and parameter because the tank was already established. On June the 6th, I finally decided it was time to move the discus down to their 55-gallon aquarium. The tank was ready and their growth spurts were becoming far more noticeable. So I turned the tank lights off down here, went upstairs and grabbed discus out of that tank 2 by 2. Then I brought them downstairs and I did the drop and plop method because I know that my tanks, this one, the upstairs one, or the one in the other room, all of them measure out the same parameters because I don't adjust my tap water at all. Now that you've been brought up to speed on the history of the tank, I want to go on to what is actually inside the tank, what's at work. So the first thing that you probably noticed is the moving bed filter. The moving bed filter was simply made so that I could have some sort of filtration method while the canister filter was being run on their original tank. And let me just say that canister filter up there, because they created so much waste and it was pumping so fast, was a daily cleaning. Now I clean it every 3 days to 4 days. I have to go in there and actually get it out, and every day I have to clean the intake valve. If you don't remember the canister filter, I'll put a link for the video right up here so you can see what I'm talking about. Now, going back to the moving bed filter, what I really wanted to do was I wanted something that wasn't exactly very efficient at filtering. Of course, the added ability for it to filter was good, but I really wanted something that was a cheap breeding cone. So I went to Walmart and I bought just a plastic tub, cut holes in it where I needed to, put an airline in, wrap some sponge around the tubing, and that gave me something that would support biomedia, as well as a place for the discus to spawn, which I must say I have already had discus eggs from this tiger turquoise. The tiger turquoise really likes to breed on my heater, which is over here, so I've put in a PVC pipe because I really don't want her burning her perpilla, and I don't want the eggs being fried. So to sort of halt that, I've put the PVC pipe, but I still think she's using the heater. I think she's very fickle. In addition to that, you notice that there's a lot of water movement in here. You know that there's a lot of air pumps. There's an air pump here, air pump behind me, and there's obviously air coming out of that moving bed filter. Now, the reason there's so many air pumps is because I keep this water at 84 degrees, which is pretty standard for discus. Now at 84 degrees, oxygen escapes from the water really fast, so I keep replenishing it by keeping the water moving. So you can know that this tank is very well aerated. I know that may sound like a really simple setup, but aside from that, daily water changes is really what keeps this tank up and going. But before we wrap up this video, I did want to show you one other piece to this. With discus overtaking my fascination, I became less and less interested in running a planted tank. So I decided to strip her bare. That way I would have room for if the discus decided to breed or to quarantine new discus. That being the case, I took all the plants out and put them in my other tank downstairs, my other display, which is a 20-gallon long. which they actually made the tank look a lot better. So I'm kind of happy with the decision. And because it has minimal filtration on that tank, the plants do a lot more work than they do here, so they seem to be growing really well. So you get to see how Darwinism works in the tank world. When you're finally done with a tank and you've decided you really don't want to run that kind of tank anymore, you convert it over to what you do want to run. The last thing I'll say that's really cool about this bare bottom tank and the 20-gallon bare bottom I just showed you is that the lights are synchronized and the heaters are set to the exact same temperature. That way, if I ever need to switch one of these fish up there, I can do so because all the levels are the same, temperature is the same, and it'll have the same light, synchronization. So the fish won't feel like it's in a different environment. It's just one of those preparations you take in case something goes wrong. So I really hope you enjoyed hearing about how I got into Discus and about the 55-gallon tank that they're in, as well as the 20-gallon upstairs, which will be prepped for future Discus, either through breeding or through purchase. But in the future, I do want to do a video that is more about the day-to-day care of Discus, but that'll come in time. If you do want to know more about Discus in the meantime, I highly recommend going to Simply Discus. They'll get you set up. Also, if you do go to Simply Discus, my name is Joshua D, so definitely add me as a friend. If you want to see more pictures of our Discus, you can certainly go to the link right here and that'll take you to our Instagram, or you can follow the link on our channel. And if you want to keep up with the videos that we post here on YouTube, I would love to welcome you as one of the members of our shoal. So here's the subscribe button. As always, I'm Joshua from Authentic Aquatics, wishing you and your aquariums the best.